Hi everyone, I thought I'd put together a really quick video walkthrough of this very preliminary checklist that we're going to be collaborating on, and just talk through some of the components for all of us to think about. So maybe you have some suggestions for change or some concerns or more creative ideas. So I'll go through the various components. The first is the title. AODA checklist. Is this really what we intend for this to be? Is it maybe more generally an accessible content checklist? Is it, do we want to include something on inclusivity? And our AODA specialist here at the college is away right now, but she did send me a couple of emails, and one of the things she invited us to think about is whether we want to include something on universal instructional design. And I don't know whether that fits into our intended purpose for this particular checklist. Maybe so. So that's something to think about. Then there are the categories. So I came up with a tentative grouping of categories, and I'll just fly through them now. The first is audiovisual materials and video content. Next is strictly audio content. The next is a question on whether we want a separate section for live audiovisual meetings, such as Collaborate. Next, static text and images within online course pages, course pages online. And by the way, the reason that I wrote it in that order, course pages online, is just to reduce any confusion about whether these categories apply to strictly online courses or any course pages that are online, even for face-to-face courses. So maybe we need to think about what we're calling these categories. Section 5 is reading materials and file attachments. 6 is a question about whether we want a separate section for interactive materials such as storyline scenarios, and with a question mark, number 7 is course organization. So those are the categories that we might want to revisit. For the elements themselves, this part is hard. It's hard for me anyway. It's the difficulties in deciding how much to include and how specific to get, and also whether it's important for the specificity or the granularity of the categories to be consistent. So do all the categories have to be equally specific, or are there compelling reasons to be more specific in some than in others? So we probably won't have time to talk about the specific elements in our meeting this Friday, but we can talk about how detailed we need to get. Then there's a column that I included here for resources. So maybe we want to include links to further instructions or explanations or descriptions for each of the elements. So maybe we want to include links, or maybe we want to include instructions or descriptions within the tables themselves, although then there's the possibility of rendering the document prohibitively and off-puttingly long for faculty. All right, and related to that as well, I'm just going to go back to the elements, and in some cases I did try to include some catch-alls. So for example, in section 5 on the reading materials, I included some specifics that seemed to me to recur in the AODA or accessibility documentation. And then I had things like this, 5.6, in MS, if this is an MS Office file, the program's accessibility checker has been run, with a hint on how to run the checker, which will not only identify items that are not accessible, but also indicate how to fix them. So maybe we might decide that that's okay, or maybe we prefer to unpack everything in greater detail. And another thing I thought about was whether we need to include some kind of disclaimer here, something to the effect of this checklist being meant to be a very general checklist for essential elements, but not necessarily reflecting a fully AODA compliant course. Yeah, so I don't know what that would look like, but maybe that's something for us to think about including. All right, so I'll stop there. I'm looking forward to collaborating with you on this, and I'll talk to you on Friday.